Let's do this! Come on. Now we're getting somewhere.
Hey guys, let's get right down to it. Symmetra. A staple defense hero on so many maps right now. She can make or break holds, but without being played properly, she can be a complete waste of space. I'm going to break down the way I play her for you, hopefully giving you some insight and tips that you might not have thought about. So let's take this in stages. The pre-game. It might be predictable, but setting up turrets outside of their spawn will net you some decent charge. There are some arguments against it and we will cover that later, but generally it's a sure way to try and get some ult charge in. I always combine this with a right click towards their spawn. You can get off quite a few as you back off to the choke, and one decent landed shot can be a pretty significant chunk of charge. You're trying to pinpoint corners and blind areas enemies are likely to walk into, but often you'll catch people just because they're following their Reinhardt, and obviously they don't have the view of the incoming projectile in front of them. I follow the same trend on every map, trying to set the turrets as far apart as possible so that they can't be destroyed in the same shot. Most of the time they'll get a bit of damage in and it's unlikely you'll kill anyone, but it'd be a waste not to use them. As soon as you shoot it, you can back off to the choke with an average of 30 to 50% charge. It's not something to write home about, but it's a good boost early on in the game that should bring you to the all important TP a lot quicker. Now if we're going to discuss why it might be a bad idea to start this way, is that you're going to be limited to the amount of turrets you're able to place after they've destroyed your initial ones. I generally find that the choke point turrets are actually destroyed a lot quicker, as most teams are expecting them to be there. On a map like Volskaya for example, they'll just send a Pharah around the outside and destroy them from behind. This would leave you with no turret charge, and no turrets left to put at your disposal. Considering that the goal of Symmetra is to have your teleport ready for your team when you have it, I'd say it's more important to build that early charge than have all your turrets up on the choke ready for them. Use the obvious routes to your advantage. Generally teams come up the left stairwell on Anubis, so prep your right click to catch them there, high ground on Numbani, right side on Volskaya, etc, etc. So on to the early game. This is all about preventing them successfully pushing through. You might not be far away from TP, but with them on the move it'll be much harder to land your right clicks. Your priorities here are setting up turrets to feed you as they commit to a push, using your barrier to defend yourself and teammates like Reinhardt when his goes down, and most importantly, landing the big right clicks on the enemy team to top that charge off. In some cases it might take 20 seconds or so if they're not grouped up, but that's fine as long as they don't commit to the push. As soon as they commit, you're in trouble, because there's a good chance your team will shortly need that TP. It's important that you don't expose yourself too much during this early game period. If you die, you failed your purpose and your team have a much higher chance of losing the point. Try and keep your teammates in front of you and back off to maintain full view of the battlefield, because it's common for a Pharah or a Genji to flank and you don't want to be caught out by them. In other cases all it takes is a couple of right clicks and you've got your ult ready. As I said before, it's so important that you don't overextend yourself. You shouldn't be in a position where an enemy is able to fight you 1v1, but if it happens, make sure you have your turrets nearby to lend a hand, and you use your barrier to avoid some damage. You are pretty formidable in a 1v1 against a squishy hero, but you won't be able to beat a Roadhog for example, unless they're really missing their shots. You shouldn't have too much trouble playing against a Tracer or Genji if they get too close. If they're playing smart though, they'll manage to get a fair bit of damage on you from beyond the reach of your beam. This is why it's important that you've got the support of your teammates so that you're not killed off. A hero that you absolutely have no chance against though is Pharah. Try and avoid letting her spot you if possible, perhaps retreating to a building if she's heading your way, as she knows how important it is to pick you off. So your ultimate is now ready. You go and place it, right? No. Consider it this way. Once placed, your teleporter is a fixed location that the enemy can flank towards and destroy. However, you are not fixed. You can move around the map playing passively and reading the situation. The enemy team will likely suspect that you've already placed your TP and start flanking around looking for it, so the trick is up your sleeve provided you don't die. This is why you need to play very passively. I'm not saying you should avoid getting some damage in, but you don't want to make yourself too much of a target. Keep using your skill set, but try to avoid engaging the enemy unless they're coming after you. If you die now, you've really messed up. What you're looking to do here is wait until one of your teammates dies. When that happens, place your TP and ensure you filled the room with turrets. Make sure it's in a spot that will get them into the action sooner rather than later and allow your team to retake the point if it's being contested. You cannot leave the teleporter though. As I said before, the enemy team will be looking to destroy it before they commit to the push, so you need to be there to defend it. This is why it's important that your team are aware of where you've placed it, as you'll likely need their help if someone fully commits to destroying it. A single Tracer you can handle, the same with a single Genji, but if they both come at the same time you're going to have a hard time protecting it. Your TP generally isn't an attempted clutch like the Mercy Res. Most of the time it will just be used to bring one person back at a time after they get picked off. This still has a massive impact on the game though, as it stops the enemy team from capitalising on entries that are made. In addition to this, people tend to avoid pushing in too heavily until that teleporter is destroyed. So if you're putting in work to defend it, they'll likely struggle to push through. When people do try to contest it, make sure you use your E to block some of that damage. You're looking to draw them into the turrets so that you can finish them off swiftly. Also, this might be up for debate, but personally I would even go so far as to body block some damage on the TP, especially if you're waiting for someone in spawn to use it, or it's still on high charge. Most of the time you can afford to absorb that damage as the enemy isn't necessarily there to focus on you. Even if they die to you, it's worth it for them as it will allow them to push through when they're back. Don't be too put off by the fact that you have to play so passively to defend the TP. It's important to consider that Symmetra is one of those heroes that either goes all in, or not at all. Her orbs are great for building charge, but it's not enough for you to solo kill people. It's harassment. Your left click is great if you come into contact with people, but you just can't afford to take that risk while you're holding your TP or while it needs protecting. Something I feel is quite important to note. If your team has just successfully won a team fight, but you lost someone in the fight, I'm more inclined to let them run back. I know that the enemy team spawn will get them to the point quicker, but they're also having to wait for the last person who died and then group up for the push. If you use your teleporter for this one person, then the enemy team have a fresh target going in for the next fight. This is so situational though, so please take it with a pinch of salt and use your best judgment. You could very easily misjudge it and end up in a team fight without a member of your team because you avoided placing your TP. I try to stick close to the area where I'm likely to place my TP so that I won't be caught out when I'm on my way there to place it. If the enemy team spots you running across the map to place your TP, there's no doubt they'll make every possible effort to shut you down. So finally, when can you play Symmetra? Don't get me wrong, there are people that have managed to main their way up to the top 500 with Symmetra. There are plenty of offensive Symmetras that place their TPs in odd locations to give your team the jump on the enemies when you're pushing, but it's not consistent. Symmetra is a hero that fits a niche, and there's nothing wrong with that. She's perfect for defending the first choke, and after that generally falls off. This has a few exceptions though. The second part of a 2CP map can often cater for Symmetra. If you have no ult charge at all, you should really switch to Lucio or Zen, provided your team only had one healer to begin with. But if you're close to ult, then your team can really see the benefit of a shield gen, as they try to use their momentum to push onto the point. The same rules apply really. You are looking to set up turrets in sweet spots to catch them out as they push through, as well as use your right click to damage them as they push in. Because the second points are often quite closed off, it makes it easy for you to chase down squishy heroes with the intention of melting them. You'll also see a lot of the same inspired attacks on your shield gen that you had on your TP earlier in the game, making for some pretty easy kills. Playing Symmetra on the second point really requires your healer to be confident that they can handle it though, so if your team have mentioned a lack of healing during the first point, it's probably best to switch off. I would generally pick Lucio if I needed to rush to contest, or Zen if we had some time and I can build ult ready to stop their push. Lucio's biggest benefit would be his ability to contest, while Zen needs some time before he's ready to fulfill his damage absorbing destiny. I wouldn't recommend taking Symmetra to King of the Hill. People might tell you it works, it may even work, but it's not ideal and your team definitely wouldn't thank you for it. As soon as they pick a Pharaoh, you're being countered and there's not really anything you can do about it. The same goes for trying to defend a moving payload as Symmetra. You don't really have anywhere to put your turrets and you just won't be able to have the impact you would have on a static point with good chokes to use. Thanks for watching guys, I hope this helps you when it comes to playing Sim, as she's pretty staple on 2CP and payload maps for now. Good luck.